Hey everybody, this is Nick Morrell with Audio Video Export here. We've got Alex Martinez of SHURE, and it's always exciting. We're doing something new, a little bit different than normal. Usually Alex would be
in my office,
in his office, but here we've got the ability because the SHURE offices actually are being reconstructed right now. So so they're using our showroom as a test bed to do some cool things, and it's our pleasure to be able to have them. So thanks for coming by, and
my pleasure.
Thanks for letting us borrow some of your gear. You guys are listening to us actually on an MXA920, which is pretty neat. And we're listening to you through the in-ceiling PoE speaker. So that's also pretty neat. And all of this is being handled on our network, and we can go into all the details of Dante, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But it's really exciting to have you here, and I've got the camera on. So for those of you who are joining us via webinar or via the YouTube, recording, you won't see the webinar, you won't see the video of us, but you do see the presentation, so you're gonna be able to get us, and that's exciting. But just wanted to be able to say a big welcome. There is a questions box, so if you do have a question, please feel free to answer or to write the question. I will either write down an answer or we'll address it, during the webinar.
If we have some time afterwards, of course, we could address it directly.
Yep.
Or a lot of the times, we usually answer the questions parenthetically in the presentation anyway.
Exactly right. So we'll figure that out as we go along, but don't hesitate to do that. And if you do have more questions and you're watching this on the recording, please go ahead and shoot me an email, nick@av-export.com, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions it is that you've got. As a general rule, SHURE, these guys are really available to all of our dealer base. And so that's awesome that you guys are available to that. And so we're grateful for that. But we generally like to have our dealers come to us directly. We want to be your first stop, your one-stop shop for everything. Most of the time, I'm asking these guys anyway, just to be able to make sure that I have my head on straight. So
well, that's a great thing, the way that we work so closely with you. It's, the people come to you like, hey, we have this project. Yep. We literally work hand in hand.
Yep.
SHURE doesn't sell directly anyway, so it's not like we were like, oh, okay, let's go do this or that.
Right.
So it's always a thing, and having somebody like me on board that I let me design, let me play with the toys.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
We call each other, we design, and that's how we're able to help you guys and the designs of for your clients.
Without a doubt. And Alex and I, sometimes have to be very careful because we can very easily geek out.
Totally. We can go on 10. Oh man, yeah. It's gonna be a 3-hour webinar.
Yeah. So we'll try to keep it concise. We've got a lot of good information for you guys. I'm gonna turn off the webcam, but we're gonna go right into it. And thanks everybody. And again, if you've got any questions, nick@av-export.com or in the questions box. We're here for you. Thanks.
Yeah. So real quick, just to start today's agenda, we're gonna do a quick overview of the 920 itself. Then afterwards, we're gonna go through the product. We're gonna go through all the details. Not so much like an unboxing per se, because it's physically already installed.
Right.
But what we are gonna be doing, we're going to be going through the differences. We're gonna be going through what makes it better than the 920, what type of installation this would be for, what type of customer you guys are thinking that this might be ideal for. Afterwards, we're gonna go into the SAI training side. The SAI, this is where you actually get your certifications, all free, online. You take the courses online that the rest of the SAI team and myself have created for you guys. And from there, we get you get your certifications for not just the 920, but for all of our different products, as well as the integrated systems courses, which are pretty neat.
Now, what
includes Dante?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that because Dante is an integral part of what it is that we're going to be reviewing today. So at this part of this certification for the 920, that's the one that requires Dante level 1.
So we're going to get to it, but basically when you take our IS integrated systems level 1 and then I'm integrated systems level 2, when you take those 2 levels, within them, you get RF courses, the master course, which is freaking amazing.
Yeah, I
love that course.
Yeah.
And then you have the Dante courses themselves, which take you directly to Automate, the people that created Dante.
Right.
And within that, you need to have level 2 certification in order to finish everything that has to do with our IS certification. And then you come back, you upload your certificate, and then it lets you continue.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we will review a little bit more about Dante. We'll give it the 30,000 foot view and some stuff.
No, it's pretty cool. And then afterwards, we'll just do a little bit of Q&A.
Awesome.
If you guys have any questions, not necessarily about the 920, we'd be happy to address them as well. But we would like to keep this kind of focused on the 920, being that it is our newest bad boy on the block.
And it is. It's again, you guys are listening to us on it, so it's really handy. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No worries. Well, what we were talking about earlier, it takes over our 910, and the idea is to not to replace it because the 910 was bad. This is what we were talking about before. It's literally to replace it with the 920, and the main reason we did this was because the chipset shortage that we were having.
Right.
Well, when we were talking about that earlier, it's affected all of us, and in such a way that we had to redevelop and come out with the 920 ahead of time because of this chip shortage. But at the same time, we were able to improve the DSP. We were able to improve the automatic coverage that this has now. It's out of the box. It's really cool. It's almost like a set it and forget it product if you really need it to be.
So just to be clear, then we're not talking about any kind of inferiority of the 910 or any any kind of there was a blip or a glitch or whatever. No, none of that. This is just by necessity because the old chip became unavailable. Then we had to by necessity after the next one.
Okay. In fact, the 920 has every single feature the 910 has, plus.
Okay.
That's kind of the cool thing. That's what takes us into this slide that we're looking at now. It's everything we loved about the 920. The DSP,
the 910, right?
I'm sorry, the 910, the DSP, the lobes, the way that we could do our coverage. That's all still there.
So the lobes are still included, but I don't see in this slide what you're talking about. It doesn't mention the lobes.
Correct. So we're going to get to that. That's actually pretty cool.
All right.
Out of the box, it comes with this new technology that we developed called the automatic coverage.
All right. So what does that do that's different from the lobes? I know that we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of schedule, but it's on the screen.
Let's actually get to that. The automatic coverage, the way that it works is out of the box. There is a square that in Designer you'll see, which the 910 will cover a 30-foot by 30-foot square.
Okay.
Within that square, instead of having 8 lobes automatically, the system is now going to be generating lobes as needed.
Okay.
So for example, right now, when we see it later in Designer, you're going to see that there's a square covering our table here.
Right.
Chances are, since we're sitting so close, we're probably in the same lobe.
In the same lobe, sure.
However, if we had somebody sitting across from us, the system, when they hear them talking, will create automatically an additional lobe, and we'll cover that area where they are.
Okay, when we get to the Designer part, for those who may be a little bit less familiar with what lobes are and does,
we can do that live.
There's a visual representation of that we can do. And I've got a couple specific questions about it that would be informative for our audience. So let's not spend too much time on that.
No worries. Yeah. And after that, we also have our next generation array architecture, which is the new way that we have been starting to set up the new lobes, because we still have the same 100 elements inside the lobes.
Wait, hold on a second. You're telling me there are 100 physical microphones that are inside this device?
There are 100 physical microphones inside that square up there.
That's a lot of microphones.
Yes. Yes, there are. So the 910 had the same. The idea was to get all those 100 elements working together in groups. And from those groups, we submix via the DSP and everything to do the echo cancellation, to do the lobe, and to do even the IntelliMix coverage, where the beam would follow you around the room.
So essentially with 100 different elements, I mean, you're calling them elements, not microphones, because that's why you're calling it a microphone array.
Correct.
Right? So with 100 different elements, essentially the array is going to be listening to absolutely everything, but based on what it is that you're telling it in the software, it's intelligently saying, well, I'm going to ignore everything except what it is that you want me to focus on.
And since it does everything via DSP, which will be phasing, rather than turning on and off, it's instant.
Okay.
We don't have to worry about starting to talk and then the microphone catches.
Okay.
The MXA will catch you.
Okay.
And just start talking automatically.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. After that, we have the new simple setup that comes with the automatic coverage.
Right.
And that's the idea of we're able to connect everything, and without necessarily going into the the designer software,
Uh-huh.
we could set up a room and get it up and going.
Now, designer software is free though, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
Yes, it is.
All right. And then, but there are two pieces of software that we're going to be looking at, or?
We are going to be using the IMX Room software,
Okay,
which is kind of like a digital P300.
okay,
For everybody that's out there, the P300 is our physical like interface box, if you will.
okay.
It does all the Dante routing. It has I/O analog, and then it has the USB connection, which is what you would end up connecting to your computer or to your soft codec.
Now, see,
to do that.
this is easily where we could go off on a tangent
Yeah.
because we started talking about the P300. I don't want to talk about the P300, but we do have them in stock. We just got a couple, right?
Yeah.
They are back ordered.
That's awesome.
So we're lucky to just
No,
came
the
out
fact that
Friday.
you guys have P300s, that's cool.
And-
Not a lot of people could say that.
And we have the new MXA920, but the P300, actually, what's neat about it, I saw a video, I think this was on your guys' YouTube page. There was a neat feature where he was doing a conference call with a standard codec, like a poly. He was doing a conference call via USB,
Yep.
right, to a computer, like similar to what we're doing right now. And then he also had a phone call via the 3.5 millimeter with a phone.
Yes.
And the P300 intelligently was able to bridge all three of those so that if you were on the phone call, he could talk to somebody that was on the poly all at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know we can go off on a tangent, but I geeked out when I saw that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And it's all the physical I/O that we have in that P300.
Right.
Just the fact that it has that 3.5,
Right.
that you could create that Y connection between both of that. I say Y, but it's the bridge connection.
Yeah.
We're saying it's amazing. Then yeah, you can connect from the poly straight in via. If you're running the poly with the Dante,
Right.
you can go straight in. It's
Right.
Yeah, and then back and forth.
Sorry, I'm geeking out again.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Well, if you want, I could even show you guys in a separate webinar. We could go through it as well.
For sure.
How to have all of that plus a sound reinforcement setup.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So continuing on, the onboard and telemix room. This is our DSP that you are used to from the 910.
Okay.
What we did was we redid the algorithms to clean up the audio, and we're seeing. I would love to say exponential, but what we're seeing is about 15-ish to 20%, depending on the setup, of audio improvement, whether more gain, cleaner audio, less distractions all around, things of that nature.
Now, this is different. This onboard IntelliMix DSP is going to be different from what we're going to be looking at, different from the one that's inside the P300 or the IntelliMix room.
Correct. It's actually the same algorithm as IMX room.
But if they're going to be running simultaneously. So yeah.
If you're running the 920 with the IMX room or the P300, which is the way we recommend it,
right?
So you have your USB connection, so you have ability to bring in extra mics or whatever.
Okay.
You won't be using this DSP. The system knows to switch over just to the P300. That way you're not double processing.
Perfect. Yeah. That's exactly awesome.
And then we also have the idea that we are designing stuff because we know everybody's now on webinars and go to meetings, Teams and stuff like that. So the idea is to be able to connect quickly, efficiently, and for it to sound good, which to me is the most important part.
Well, at the end of the day, if we can get our installer to be able to spend less time on site, that means that they're going to be wasting time. They're not going to be wasting time, and then they can go and do another installation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I know, because I've used, and some of the questions that I'm asking are really for the benefit of the audience, because I know I've worked with Alex now for almost a year now, and even though that, like you said, the 920 is new, but it's not exactly new.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great features that come over from the 910. But the point is, though, is that the ease of installation that we did in order to be able to run what it is that we're running right now, even in this small conference room, is really phenomenal. And no installer would have had to go back. I mean, assuming that you've got your network set up right and you've got a good PoE switch, like the Luxel ones that we sell, you're not going to have an issue with these devices.
I think we were up and running in 30 minutes
at maximum, and that's only because we had to put the poles together.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So, but that's the idea. It's to make it more efficient. The installers have multiple rooms that they're doing, and if we could get them to shave off 15-20 minutes per room, that adds up.
Yeah,
it really does.
And reduce calls, reduce service calls too.
Definitely. So this is the automatic coverage that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Right out of the box, if you connect to the 920. You can, you set it up with your switcher. Everything stays the same. You still need your switcher. It needs IP. You go in. But actually, here's something pretty cool. You could use, and this is for everybody that is old school, that likes it. You could actually go through the IP once again.
So it's got a web interface.
Yes, it does.
Nice.
Yes, it does. We were able to allocate the newer DSP to be able to process the microphone and the GUI at the same time.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. The 910 with the, what was it? Adobe, when they redid all their stuff, that everything went away.
Flash?
It was Flash, wasn't it?
Yeah, Flash.
Yeah, once Flash went away, we
Yeah.
weren't able to process externally. Everything had to be internally. So it took a lot of the processing from the 910.
Okay.
And we weren't able to do both at the same time.
But now
So everything had to go straight into the designer. We still recommend designer because you have the most leeway with different stuff, and you're able to work with all the different components at the same time. But if you want to go straight into the 920 and you just want to like see it and set it up automatically, you could actually have the IP address again.
Okay.
That's something that we listen to our users.
Right.
A lot of people wanted to go straight into IP. I'm one of them.
Okay.
I'm one of them. Sometimes we don't want to open up designer. Sometimes we don't have to change the routing. We don't have to change the compressor ratio or anything like that. I just need to change the lobes.
Right. Now, but let me ask you, so if we're working in a more complicated network that maybe we're not able to locate what that IP address is because an IT admin has put restrictions on it, the software will do, like similar to a Bonjour, where it'll scan the network and it'll
we have an additional software called Device Discovery.
Okay.
SHURE Device Discovery. Again, it's a free software. It's another free download. The main software that I probably recommend everybody to download is the SHURE Update Utility.
Okay.
The SHURE Device Discovery.
Okay.
And the designer itself.
Okay, and all of those are free?
All of those are free.
And available on the website, shure.com?
Yep.
Perfect.
You could go in and the Device Discovery will search the entire network, even if it's a different IP, even if it's a different gateway. It doesn't matter. If it's connected, it will find it.
Okay.
And it will tell you all the exact addresses, so you can see if it's in a different network. You can see everything right from that software. That's all it does.
Okay.
The cool thing about that is you could just double click on the 920 right on that software, and it'll take you straight to the IP for that.
Perfect. Okay.
But yeah, this what we're seeing here is the way that it comes on default. Anybody that's used to seeing designer will know the grid layout and will be able to know the way that it's set up. Right off the bat, right out of the box, it's a 30-foot by 30-foot coverage, like I said. And the idea is that big box, you have up to 8 lobes that are able to be created by the system to cover the room itself and anybody that might be speaking in the room.
Okay.
Same as the 910, just more advanced. It will detect people sitting or standing, and it will follow you between sitting and standing.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Oh, wait till we get to the camera stuff.
Okay.
If you don't like this automatic setup and you wanted to isolate the room a little bit more, you could also do this type of setup. This is what we call our dynamic coverage.
Okay.
In the dynamic coverage, you create up to 8 boxes. So the idea is, instead of creating lobes that are covering just an area or a person from that, you're creating 8 boxes. And within those boxes, you're telling the system, hey, this, for example, this U shape that you see here, I want to cover just that U-shaped table. That's probably either a podium or somebody talking up front. The smallest box that we could create is 2 meters by 2 meters. And then we could adjust the different boxes and create up to 8 different boxes to cover whatever area we want. The system knows to ignore those areas outside. So for example, if I stand up and go pour myself a glass of water or a cup of coffee, it knows to ignore me over there in the coffee table.
Right. Because again, it's listening to everything, but because you're not in the box anymore. Now, but I think because you're talking about lobes, I think that it's important for us to really describe exactly what a lobe does in the new system as compared to the old system. And then for those who may not be familiar with the 910 at all, what a lobe does. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try to explain it as best as I understand it. And you correct me if I, or add. The lobes that we're talking about, again, are selectable. You can put them in the old system in the same, it's the same idea of these boxes. in the old style. But the lobes then are the number of speakers that can be listened to simultaneously is another component to this idea, right?
Correct. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. So for example, that long square on the bottom, let's say there's 6 people sitting in that area.
So it's up, it can listen to all 6 of those.
Listen to all 6 of those at the same time. And it could create up to 8 lobes total on all the boxes. So for example, if you create one box, you could say have 1 lobe there. In the bigger box, if the bigger box realizes that it needs 3 lobes to cover those 6 people, it'll create 3 lobes.
Now, is that a dynamic change that it does at the same time? So if, let's say that I got 10 people that are here, right? And 6 of them are on the bottom rectangle. So if the 6 of them start talking at the same time and nobody else, it's no problem.
Correct.
But if you've got 6 of them that start talking, and even though there are other squares that are available, once we get to our 8, even though there are 10 people, we're maxed out. Only 8 people are going to be heard at the same time.
No, so it's not 1 lobe per person.
Okay.
The lobes are still able to go wide, medium, and narrow.
Okay.
So that idea of lobe coverage still exists. The only thing that we're adding to those 8 lobes that we had before is audio fencing.
Okay.
We're literally telling them that this is the coverage or the coverage area that we want these lobes to focus on only.
Okay.
So if a noise happens in the middle, if you have a noisy projector in the middle of that U shape, you won't hear the noisy projector. Okay. If you have people on the outside, you won't hear those people on the outside. You'll still have the 8 lobes. It's still the same coverage as the 910 idea.
Right.
The only thing is that what we're adding now, we're telling the system, hey, instead of automatically creating 8 lobes, because not a lot of people use 8 lobes.
Right.
Some people only use 4 or 5 or 6, depending on the room size and the coverage that they want for that room. Now we didn't take it away. We basically automated it to tell the system, hey, this is the area that we want you to focus on and the area that we want you to look at. But you still have up to 8 lobes available. Rather than me saying, focus always 6 lobes on this, we're saying you have up to 8.
Okay.
And you could create them as you see fit.
So essentially the system becomes a little bit more flexible because you're not limiting where the lobes can be. You're limiting where the lobes can be, yes, but within the space, as opposed to the older style, which was you set the lobe in a specific place, and then if somebody happened to be an inch out of that, then they were out again.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct.
I got it.
So this is what we call our dynamic. We also have one that's called static.
Okay.
Static is for your podium.
Okay.
Static is
always
for your VIP.
Right.
It is a fixed 2 meter by 2 meter box.
Okay.
And we'll always have one dedicated lobe to it.
Okay. So then that means that, because that's a static one at the top there, right?
Yeah, because it's a perfect square.
It's a perfect square.
Yeah.
So then that means that the other 3 would have to divide the other 7 lobes.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Correct. And what we've seen is people usually do that type of setup in a courtroom.
Right.
You put a 920 right on top.
The judge.
You put exactly. You put the static right on top of the judge, and then the other 2 covering the 2 tables.
Right. And then a third one maybe for the witness.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
On the flip side, this is what the 920 software itself looks like. We just have that one fader, which is the auto mix art.
Right.
If we don't turn off the automatic coverage, that's all you see.
Okay.
If you go into the settings, which is that picture that we see here, you're going to be able to go in and in general, turn off automatic coverage lobe.
Okay.
You can see there. That will allow you to use the 920 as a 910.
Gotcha.
The improved audio quality is still there.
Right.
The improved DSP is still there. Everything that makes a 920 is still there. The difference is instead of using those boxes, you're using a traditional lobe system.
Okay.
Some people prefer to work that way. Awesome. All right. We're giving you both options.
Very good.
Yeah. And same thing, right out of the default, you have the traditional 30-foot by 30-foot coverage.
Okay, and so this is for those who may not be familiar, this is what the lobes look like. And in the old system, you could change not only the position of the lobes, but also the shape of the lobes, right?
Yeah. The corners are probably, it looks like they're in wide, whereas the cross that we see in towards the middle, those look like those are medium type lobes. Okay. But yes, you could go from narrow all the way up to wide.
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea of the areas, and I don't have to worry about the lobes. Let the machine do what it's supposed to do.
It makes it a lot more fun. It just, you design the area. If you're using our designer software, you bring in the photo, the CAD, you do everything to scale, and you're telling the system, this is where the table is. This is where the chairs are. We want this coverage right here.
Right.
Rooms that aren't treated as well, this is great for that. Because all of a sudden you are ignoring glass.
Right.
You're ignoring walls.
Reflections,
You're ignoring,
reverberations.
that first order, those first order harmonics.
Yeah.
It's horrible. That'll kill you. Yeah. So by doing that, you're telling the system, ignore those reflection problem areas.
Right.
And just focus on the chairs.
Right.
Focus on the people, focus on where that table is.
Well, we just hope nobody moves the table.
Well, if they do, we could set up a different one and save it as a preset.
Of course.
Because we still have that. But yeah,
That's a good idea.
and that's kind of like what we're doing for those multi-use rooms. The multi-use room, we just leave it 30 by 30.
Okay.
So that way this would just, okay, here's the room. Let the system decide, and whatever table comes in, you're able to have coverage without having to worry.
That's the maximum distance that it can do, right? 30 foot by 30 foot. So if the microphone, for whatever reason, were not centered in the room, we could only go, what would that be, 15 feet away from the microphone in any
No,
direction?
but it's 30 foot by 30 foot coverage.
Okay.
So something that we could show you is when we do the live demo,
Okay.
is how we could have that 30 foot by 30 foot area, and we could actually move that square
Okay.
anywhere in the room.
Okay.
Just like we used to do with the 910.
Okay.
For bigger setup, for bigger conference rooms and stuff like that, we could focus on a certain area. The area of coverage is still 30 by 30.
Oh, understood. All right. But there would have to be a distance limitation from the.
Yes.
Yeah. It shows it to us, and
Designer shows us everything.
Okay.
And once we go past a certain area of coverage, is really nice because it turns red.
Okay.
And it snaps back.
That makes it easy.
It doesn't let you mess it up.
Okay, good. Well, so then it's important for us to be able to put that image of a to scale drawing in the background. That way we can. Yeah.
You should always try to do something like that.
Okay.
When we go live, we didn't do it here.
I don't have one.
Nick, yeah,
I don't have one.
you know this room better than anybody.
Yeah.
So as long as we have the dimensions of the room,
Right.
we were able to calculate it enough for our coverage and for what we needed.
Okay.
But if you're doing something with a client, it's always best if they could give you some type of CAD drawing.
Right.
So you could see everything to scale and get the actual coverage.
Perfect. Yep. Set it out.
Yeah. Moving on to the camera stuff. This is actually pretty cool. This is the new stuff that the 920, where it's really going to excel. For the first time ever, we have actual exact position of where that lobe is in space. X, Y, and Z.
Even height.
Even height.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in reality when it comes to the camera? I mean, what's happening?
So before, where we had PTZ cameras,
right,
and the camera system was getting activated by the lobes on the command strings, like normal, the way we're used to sending command strings to the camera system and going to point at this, when this lobe turns on, point at this reference area. What happens now is if your camera system is able to actually use XYZ coordinates,
okay,
we're going to be able to tell the camera exact location. So rather than going to an area, cover a lobe, cover an area, cover this section, you're literally going to tell the camera, go to this person talking.
So I remember, this was years ago, this is well over a decade ago when I was working at a local university. We had Polycom systems all over the place, right? When they were still called Polycom. And you had the camera, and then around the camera, you had two microphones, one to the left, one to the right, and then one that had kind of like it was like on a boom arm right above it, right? And so it was using those three microphones to be able to triangulate where that person is in the space. And then the camera would be able to auto zoom. And it was actually, even though we're talking 15 years ago, it was able to do that. It was actually fairly accurate.
Basically, it was using radar.
Right. Yeah.
The time it takes for each mic.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. So for distance as well as position. So we're saying that with this one microphone array, the MXA920, it will do, because it's got those 100 elements in there, it's essentially doing the same thing.
Yes.
internally,
Yeah.
and then it's going to send a command string over to the camera system in order to say, hey, zoom in and move over here.
It's going to be able to give you the height of the position of where the sound is coming from,
Right.
and tell the camera go directly to this spot.
Okay. All right, and I'm assuming that there would be some kind of a limitation of more than one person's talking at the same time.
It would work the same way as the lobes.
Okay.
So we have 8 lobes available. Once the lobe catches you, it automatically changes the position to that lobe,
Okay.
and it tells the camera go to that. At that point, you will go to the camera system and tell the camera, follow priorities,
Right, okay.
slowly go from this person to the other. Don't cut.
Right.
Or you could have, I know some larger setups have multiple cameras
Okay.
in the room. Sometimes that would be
That's
beneficial as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you could
I didn't
go
even think
from a wide to a medium shot. So, but again, we should geek out on this by itself.
Well, I know that you've got, and we won't talk about which ones. Unfortunately, we don't carry those lines, but there are a couple of lines that are listed on the SHURE website that work with this natively. I checked, unfortunately, as it is right now, the camera brand that we carry does not do this, but I know that the AMX system, so for those people who are doing an AMX or a Crestron, or the camera system doesn't use it, usually those higher end systems can receive this command string in order to be able to then send a preset or a favorite or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not proprietary.
Right.
It's not proprietary. We don't say work with this company XYZ.
Right.
It's an open architecture using standard command strings, and any camera system that can do XYZ tracking will be able to be used with this new 920.
Okay. All right.
Cool thing about it is that it doesn't only go to the lobe itself, it will actually center itself.
Okay.
And will tell you the exact center of that lobe.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a great new feature.
Yeah. Something else that we've been doing with the 920 and the different tests is that now we're going to be able to do sound reinforcement and voice lift.
Okay.
The 920 is the first piece of gear that we have to do this right out of the box like that.
So I'm an old school audio guy, and sound reinforcement makes a lot of sense to me. A PA system, I get that. Usually we'll say sound reinforcement or PA almost interchangeably. What do you mean voice lift? What is that as it relates to sound reinforcement? How is it different? What does that mean?
So the idea of voice lift is if we were in a large room or a speaking hall, for me to be, let's say I'm doing this presentation on stage, I'm not wearing a microphone, everything is straight from our 920, is for the person that is hearing me from the first row all the way to the back of the room, so they could hear me at the same level as if we were 1 meter apart.
Okay.
The idea is to make it invisible. That's what a voice lift is. So it is a type of sound reinforcement, but it's not what we would consider like a regular PA.
So this is something that the MXA 920 isn't going to do by itself. It has to work in conjunction with what looks to be either the P300 or the IMX room.
Correct.
As well as your 5, the
MXN5R speaker.
Right. Okay.
So that combination will allow you to at 30 feet, which is what we found using the PAGNAG calculator, which we have a free version of it on our site, in our website as well.
Okay.
That at 30 feet is where we have enough audio loss that we need a type of reinforcement in order to begin lifting audio.
Right.
For it to sound as if, like you and I are talking right now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, but to be clear though, it's a combination. We have to use the P300 or the IMX room as our processor. The ANI USB would not allow us.
No, it won't. No. It doesn't have the DSP.
Yeah. All right. So then we're using our MXA 920 at minimum 1, and then several of the speakers themselves in order to be able to get that amplification. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's a neat feature because again, you want certain areas. Certain areas are going to need a little bit more TLC, tender level care than others.
Definitely.
I was trying to find the nice way to be able to say it. So this allows the processor to do what it needs to do so that it sounds, even though you and I may be further apart, it sounds like we're not.
Correct. That's the idea. It's to be invisible. You don't know it's working until you turn it off.
Gotcha.
That's what voice lift really is. Now, something really cool, and this is what we started kind of talking about right before we started this webinar, is the idea of a combination of this type of voice lift plus the PTZ tracking, where you could have cameras in this room following you. You could have it connected to a soft codec. So now we're able to stream this this webinar that I'm talking in this make-believe auditorium.
Sure.
And at the same time, using the separate mixing matrix that we're capable of in the IMX room,
Right.
and the P300, we could send a separate mix to the voice lift setup.
That's impressive. I like that idea a lot.
It's one processor, one connection, and everything connected via Dante.
And for the exact same amount of money as we were spending on the old 910.
Yes, that's a little tidbit there. We did not change pricing between 910 and 920. The pricing is exactly the same.
That's a really handy. That's awesome. Thank you.
In terms of actually mounting the 920, we created a couple different stuff. We have the regular in ceiling for the drop down ceiling. We have the VESA mount, which is a regular pole mount. We have the same VESA mount, but instead of a pole, it's almost like an aircraft cable.
Yep.
And then one of my personal favorites, which is kind of weird, but it's using the hanger cables. So if you want a little bit more of an aesthetic setup, if it's one of these newer buildings that everything is, designed first, functionality later, this works beautifully because we're able to hang everything and it just looks like another pendant lights or one type of decoration from the ceiling itself.
It looks identical almost to one of those AC exhausts.
Yes.
For intake.
Yeah. If you put it just in a drop down seating, it's the same way, and it looks exactly like the 910. So much so that it's the exact same numbers for the accessories between the 910 and the 920.
Now, to be clear though, you were talking about there being a VESA mount on the back of that. So you're telling me that with the standard projector, mounts that we would sell, like what we do with Chief, I can use a pole mount, I can use a ceiling mount, and then I can use all of that, and it all works together.
Yeah, we have a standard mount on it. And we made it that way so it could be standard through anywhere, no matter if this is going to be a traveling system,
right?
If it's going to be a rental system, or if it's going to be a permanent install,
right?
You have all those options available to you.
And then the other thing that I'm noticing here is that for the airplane wire on the rightmost image there on the 900-S-GM, I'm seeing there, this is slightly different from the 910 because
you have a good eye, yeah. So the 910 had it in the corners, and we found that it wasn't necessarily as stable as we thought it was. So for the 920, we moved it to the center of each panel.
Okay. All right, but functionally, it's going to be identical.
Functionally, it's the same.
Okay.
If you are replacing a 910 with a 920 and it's hanging like that, you are turning it 90 degrees.
Okay, I got you. Understood. So it wouldn't fit in that application.
If it's a drop down, yeah, it wouldn't fit that. You would have to turn it physically 90 degrees.
All right, gotcha.
And then for the round, we have pretty much the same setup. The only difference is that now there's a pretty cover.
Because this obviously is not designed to be in a drop ceiling, otherwise you have holes in it.
Yes.
So this almost looks like the stem, and again, we can geek out on stem and go off on another tangent there, but it looks almost the same as the stem.
So when we came out with the stem speaker line, everybody started saying like, "Oh, we like this round and cool for aesthetic reasons."
Yeah.
So
I think it's gorgeous.
One of the cool things, if you ever take apart that 920 or even the 910 to paint the grill, because you guys that are installing, we could paint this to whatever color to match the ceiling. If you ever take it apart, you will realize that inside that square is actually the round elements and everything. So all we did was we redid the housing to be a round housing, and everybody that kept asking us that they liked the stem ceiling, but they wanted it on an MXA line,
right?
We gave them this option.
I think it's stunning. I think it's gorgeous, frankly.
A lot of these, and it's exactly the same coverage, it's the same DSP. Everything, the guts inside are identically.
So we don't lose anything by using round
at all.
Square.
It's just for aesthetic reasons.
Okay.
And then everything that we've talked to up to this point, just a quick overview at a glance for everybody that's with us. Big difference is the auto mix that automatically once you open up the box and just plug it in, it will already be set up for that 30 by 30. You have that automatic coverage with the IntelliMix, and you don't have to change anything unless you physically want to, and then you could, increase, decrease that box, add more boxes, change it back to lobes, completely up to you.
Now I'm noticing here, and this was the same as the 910. We have two different versions. It's like two different sizes is really the better term. We've got the US, that's going to be 24 inches by 24 inches, right?
Yeah, standard 2 feet. Yeah.
And then you've got the 60 centimeters. So for those, I mean, if you actually do the calculation, 60 centimeters compared to 24 inches, it's minimal. So most of the time, at least in the history that I've seen it, people have been ordering the US regardless of what the drop ceiling size is. But be aware that Audio Video Export is stocking both. Right now, we do have the 910 in the 60 centimeter and the 920 in the US 24 inches. We don't have round yet. Do we know when those are going to be released?
I believe sometime early next year. I don't have exact dates though.
All right. So, and then it obviously comes in the white, the black, and the aluminum as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are recommending that if you are going to be painting it, to get the white, just to make it easier on yourself. The paint that is on all of them can be painted, but understand you're going to need a lot more paint to cover up a silver or a black, rather than a just already white that's pretty much primered.
Right.
All right, and now let's go to a little bit of that live demo that we were talking about.
All right, let me switch over here and stand by while we change our presenter here. And we're going to show our screen. You guys should have our screen available. And then Alex, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yeah. So anybody that's used to seeing our designer already knows what this screen is. We already have our 3 devices online, just happens to be our 3 devices that we are using in the room, be it the 920, IMX Room software, which does appear as a device, and the MXN5 speaker.
And bear in mind that IMX Room software, that is loaded on the same computer that I'm using in the rack here.
Yeah.
So in our particular cases, and this is what I'm finding, most people, when they want to use a soft codec, we've got the 920, right, which is in the ceiling. We have the MXN5, which is an in-ceiling speaker. Both of those are PoE powered. The IMX Room software is loaded onto a computer that I built for our rack. So next time you guys come over and see our showroom, you'll be able to see it there. But in addition to the computer housing the showroom, it's also hosting the webinar. It can also do a great variety of things. So I'm a big fan of having a dedicated computer in the room for these specific reasons. Because if you were to load it onto a room or onto a computer that's not permanently there or gets turned off, then obviously you lose a lot of the processing.
Definitely.
And what's neat about this is that then the IMX Room, what it allows you to be able to do, and again, that's purely software. So for whatever reason, I'm out of the P300 because we've sold them all out, or the ANI USB, and I don't have a way to be able to get these Dante sounds, audio channels into my computer. The IMX Room is a license. I think you can buy a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-year license.
We have to double check on that, but I believe it's like 3.5 now.
Okay. So the point is though is that it's a license that you buy for a specified period of time. And what it allows you to do is it allows that computer then to function as an on and off ramp for Dante. So in my software and in my Windows machine that we're running on, it appears as though it were another, like a webcam video or a webcam audio, right? Or if I were to plug in my MV7 microphone via USB, it appears as another source.
I love that little.
It's a great one. Honestly, if we weren't doing what we're doing right now, I would be on my MV7 right now that I've got installed.
Yeah, if we were on my desk, I would be on mine too. I love that little.
It's a great one. But I want, even though we're not really covering the IntelliMix Room software today, it is a really powerful piece of software, and it is a good fix for issues of inventory because it is software based. You don't have to worry about, SHURE can generate licenses up the yin-yang.
Yeah.
There's no.
One of the other cool things about using IMX Room versus physical hardware is the fact that the IMX Room can go up to 16 channels of Dante. whereas the P300 is limited to 8.
Limited to 8. But do we ever find an answer on the number of flows?
No, I don't have that.
That's level 2 stuff.
Yeah,
that we're talking about,
so we can check that. But what I was saying between the 8 and 16, this is for the auto mix.
Okay.
We still have the same amount of Dante inputs as a regular P300. The only thing is that now in IMX Room, we're able to use 16 channels for auto mixing. And so, for example, if we were using two 920s and instead of using the auto mix output, we are using the lobe output.
Right.
We could use the lobe output of those two 920s, which are 8 lobes from each one, straight into an IMX Room software. And that software will allow us to do the auto mixing of all 16 lobes as if it were one giant 920.
I'd like to take a look a little bit more at that auto mixing because the MXA920 also does the auto mixing.
It does.
So let's take a look at that within the MXA920.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, again, I'm an old school sound guy. I've been doing professional live audio for all of my adult life and half of my child life. So mixing for me is second nature, but there are a lot of, you can't, if you don't have a human being inside the room to do the mixing for you,
and that's the idea.
you have to have an auto mixer.
Yeah. So right before we go into that IntelliMix and turn it off and so they can see the difference, let me show everybody the room that we're physically working in right now. So right now, the room that we're working with is 5.5 meters by almost 4 meters with a standard ceiling of 74. This, what we're seeing here is literally where we are sitting in right now. We have the 920 set up towards the end of one of the walls, and we have one lobe. No, see, it got me doing it.
Yeah, got me. It's a bad habit.
It is. It's such a bad habit. So we got one dynamic coverage area set up, and this is the entire boardroom table where we're sitting right now. And I'm telling the system, this is the only coverage area that I want to be covered.
Right.
And we have up to 8 lobes available for that one dynamic area. And what we see here, that's the speaker itself. So if you guys just want to make it a little bit cleaner, we can turn off the coverage area for the speaker so that we could see just where that area is.
Okay, and essentially, and this is, the design of this is because that's the shape of the room.
Correct.
Although it's a little bit more angled in at some parts, but just to be able to get the system working and focused. There generally would be a lot of reverberation. A standard microphone would hear a lot of reverberation, but you guys should hear minimal, if any.
And it's still lively because we are in a lively room.
Right.
But if we were to turn this, it's incredible. When we were doing the testing beforehand, where we just put in a regular microphone, I think we're getting a little over a second when we did this with Miguel.
Yeah.
Of decay.
Right.
And it was fun. It was fun. So for example, if we're setting this up, we just select the microphone just as always, that nothing changes there. And then over here, we could add coverage. We could add that dynamic, which is the same blue box, or we could have the dedicated that we were talking about.
That's the fixed size.
Correct. This is a fixed 2 meter by 2 meter. The coverage area cannot overlap, so that if you see that there, it's not letting me do that.
Gotcha.
So it would be, I would have to put it right there next to it.
Now with the dedicated, this is when we're required to dedicate a lobe as well. So the dedicated does 2 things. Number 1, it gives you a fixed size, it's not movable. But the other part of that is that it's fixing a lobe there. So just bear in mind for anybody that's doing a dedicated that you do sacrifice a lobe for that dedicated space.
Right.
Most instances, it's not going to be an issue.
No, and again, I personally recommend that you set it up for somewhere that there's always going to be somebody that needs to be heard. A podium.
Your chairperson.
Your chairperson.
Your judge,
your judge if you're doing a court. If we're setting this up for classrooms, that we're seeing a lot more classrooms.
The lectern. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so obviously where you place these devices is going to be based on what is actually going to be going on. So this is going to be one of those moments where you as an integrator need to have very good communication with your end user in order to be able to make sure that, number 1, your installation location, it's less important because the MXA920 really gives you a lot of flexibility.
Correct.
You're more important, what's going to be a little bit more strict is going to be your speaker placement actually.
So now we're literally, we could put it anywhere in the room
Right.
and tell it to go focus over there.
Focus on that.
Obviously, physics are physics. We can't change that yet.
Right.
So the closer you put the microphone to the source, obviously, the better the coverage.
Of course. Now, in this particular case, how we saw the red when you did the dedicated box, I'm assuming that it would give us another red if we were to expand this coverage to an area that's too large or too small.
For example, if I were to take the coverage of ourselves, well, let me not do that because then we'll lose us.
Yeah.
So let me add another one. And then we'll add coverage. We'll do the same dedicated. If I start going too far out the area, which it won't let me do because we're that close, it
Fit again.
now we'll just zoom out. Let's see if we can do something bigger. Right there. You saw it go to the red.
I thought it was because of the overlap.
Oh yeah, you're right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty darn good distance. I mean, it's covering way more than I would have expected.
Oh yeah.
So here's
Snap back.
So here's another important point where a lot of people, they talk about how budget sensitive they may be. Now, I don't know what the MSRP is on this, and I'm not going to talk dealer pricing because it's going to get published on our YouTube page. The MXA920, it's not the cheapest microphone that exists in the world. It's not the most expensive either. But the point is, though, is that when we're talking about this, you only need one or two where you might need many more other microphones. So the cost benefit to this seems like it's very reasonable.
We've set this up for clients that are used to having traditional goosenecks on the table.
Yep. And similar to the Microflex wireless system.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So if they don't need all that, the voting button system and all that stuff, which is amazing for what it is,
right?
For its dedicated use. If you literally just want microphones, we found that we could cut the quote almost in half,
right? By
offering a 920 or a 910.
Right.
Usually because the 920 is too new. We offer either 910 or a 920 with a processor and set up for the room properly. That's a big thing. Setting it up, having it installed properly, having it configured properly. And all of a sudden they went from 20 microphones in a room that on a table taking up space,
right,
to a completely open table, and they still have the same audio quality.
Now that you mentioned the properly, because that's an important qualifier, a lot of our integrators, many of them are familiar with pro audio or this kind of audio. Some are not. For those who feel a little bit less comfortable, and I'm only saying this because I know Alex has already given me the okay to say this, we are available, whether it be myself or Alex, to be able to help you with an initial setup. Now, the goal here is for us to be able to teach you enough that on your second and third setup, you're doing it on your own. But on your first one and even your second one, we're there in order to be able to guide you along, in order to be able to say, all right, what are some of the best practices here in order to be able to get your settings configured the right way?
Yeah, we'd be happy to teach you to fish.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're here for that. We want you guys to have the most success, because at the end of the day, if it's an unsuccessful install, it reflects poorly on everybody in the supply chain, not just you. So we want to make sure that you guys are set up for success in every way, shape, and form.
Indeed. Well, continue on to what we were talking about, the type of coverage. Then we go, just quickly go back into it, and we can see the IntelliMix room. The AutoMix, right, is just one channel out. If you don't have all the channels like how we did before,
right,
you still have the AGC, the automatic gain control.
Yep.
We still have.
As a general rule, I recommend everybody maintain that on.
Yeah. The automatic echo cancellation.
Another one on.
The noise reductor.
The noise reducer. Again, another one on.
Actually, we could probably even put that a little bit higher. It might even work a little bit better. And then the EQ.
All right.
So this is
level 2.
Yeah. So the EQ and the compressor. This is where we start kind of going back and forth as text. Some people prefer to EQ and compress at the source, while others prefer to EQ and compress at the P300 at the mix level. So the P300 or the IntelliMix room. We give you the option for both. We're not telling you how to mix it. We're giving you the tools so you could do either or.
The P300 will allow you to do it at the individual input as well?
Yes.
Okay, so
So you could do at each individual load,
Right.
you could do it at the mix.
Yeah.
And then just for fun, for S's and G's,
Right.
you could even do it at the output stage for each individual output.
All right,
For the USB, analog, and digital output.
but for the love of God, do it only in one place.
Yes.
Please. That would be a big problem.
Yeah.
So do it in one place, whatever your standard is, it doesn't matter. I'm, again, an old school audio guy. I like doing my compression and EQ at the source. If I can, most microphones in a pro audio don't allow you to do that. So you're doing it on the input of the mixer itself, which is 9 times out of 10 that's where I'm going to go to.
Yeah. But you do have the ability to do it at any point of the signal chain that you'd like.
Yeah.
Again,
But just decide, for the love of God, just decide on one and stick with that.
Definitely, yeah. And then what we'll do is I'll show you guys where it is that you can turn off. I'm not going to turn it off in this example, only because if I were to turn it off, it would default to the 30 by 30 type setup, and we would start hearing the room and everything all over again.
Right.
So all you have to do is go into your settings, which is that little gear right there, and in your general settings, the very first one right there is your automatic coverage.
Right.
You turn that off, it becomes a 910.
Okay.
In terms of lobes.
Right.
So, and again, like I said earlier, you don't lose any DSP, you don't lose the better audio that you get in the processing for the 920. You get your lobes back. That's it.
Perfect. Okay.
And again, it goes back to the idea of what we keep saying and we keep reiterating. It doesn't replace the 910 because it was a bad product. On the contrary, the 910 was such a good product that we just made it and augmented with the 920.
No, I'm ecstatic about everything that I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's really nice. Again, everything that you guys are seeing us do right now, we are doing live on our computer. That's why it's taking a little bit longer. We just have to make sure we're not double checking on everything. Real quick, just so that you guys could see the IMX room that Nick was saying. This is the per channel processing that you have for each individual input, your auto mixer, and then your matrix mixer, which is what I was talking about, where we could route the different outputs for voice lift, sound reinforcement, as well as your soft codec.
Now, there's an important note for some of the more keen-eyed people who are on here and a little bit more advanced. There are lines that go from the auto mixer into the matrix mixer that would lead you to believe that there are multiple outputs on that auto mixer.
Correct, there are not.
There are not.
Yeah.
Right? No. So all of those mic inputs, numbers 1 through 16, do in fact go to the auto mixer.
Right here, and then they go to the matrix.
Okay. So again, it's a mixer, so it's meshing all of those and mixing all of those inputs together for a single output. So don't be confused.
So I remember us talking about this last time, and I went back, and the reason they did this is because in the matrix mixer, you could still have direct output. So if I wanted to go 1-to-1, you would still do it in the matrix mixer.
Bypassing the auto mixer?
Bypassing the auto mixer.
Okay, so
that's probably why they left those lines in. Okay. But yes, in a traditional setup, and if you're running a normal flow diagram, which 98% of us, if not 100,
right,
will do, it will be those 8 or 16 channels into your auto mixer. And then from there you would process, and then your matrix would probably just be the USB out, which is what we have now. Right. It's connected to our soft codec. However, and I looked this up, I forgot to tell you about this earlier. I looked this up because this confused the heck out of me.
Well, I asked you about it. I'm like, Alex, why are there lines when there shouldn't be lines there?
Yeah, it confused the heck out of me. You know what? Oh man, Nick, you're right. That shouldn't be there. But we went back, and the reason for that is because in the matrix itself, we could bypass it, and you could go 1-to-1 direct.
Okay. All right. And again, this is
way more advanced. But again. And we warned you guys that we were going to go on tangents.
Yeah, it's your fault.
But yeah, that is the live setup, so you guys can see how the 920 is set up, how we're able to adjust the different coverage areas, and how we're able to either add or subtract, exactly like how we're used to adding and subtracting lobes. That doesn't change at all.
Awesome. So again, if there are any questions, it looks like all of the questions that were there have been answered. If there are any questions, we do have a few minutes and we're able to talk about that. I'm gonna actually shut down the recording right now, just so we can do that. So that if you're watching and you've got any questions, again, nick@av-export.com, and I will. Oh, I'm sorry, you have a couple things to review first. I'm gonna switch this back over to you, Alex. Go ahead and talk about the SHURE Audio Institute that I forgot.
No worries. So SHURE Audio Institute, or SAI for short, is our online school, for lack of a better word. This is where we offer all of the different courses for certification, all the different courses for all of our products, anywhere from how to mic a 58 to your band,
Right.
all the way up to how to properly network a 920 for an auditorium. We have classes for everything. We have courses for everything. The more intense courses we do offer certifications for, and we do require that, well, certain companies are required to take them in order to install all these systems, but it's one of those things that we definitely want you to take. It's free of charge, and it just allows you to be able to just familiarize yourself with our systems, how to install it, how to properly set it up. I can't like emphasize that enough.
No, it's been a great resource. Yeah. And again, I love learning new things. It's what keeps us all young, right?
Yeah.
So, but I respect the time that I have with my vendors. And so when I get a moment and we're able to talk to Alex, I want him to know that, oh crap, this is something serious that Nick couldn't figure out, instead of some of the questions that might be a little bit more entry level. So, again, we're here for all of that. If you need me to guide you through something, go ahead. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and we don't mind. We learn something every day.
Right.
Even the simplest questions, we always like, oh, I never thought about looking at that way. And right. I love those questions.
Yeah.
Nick and I talk almost every day, and we start geeking out and we do our stuff. But when we start talking about different cases and things and different things that we've done, a lot of times we're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. And it allows us to learn different ways to get to the same outcome.
But the SHURE Audio Institute is definitely the resource for you guys to be able to do your level 1 stuff. And then, and again, we're here. We're a resource for you. This is fun for us, right? This is not a chore. But you don't want to skip out on the SHURE Audio Institute just because you have us, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So the more communication that we've got with you all as our dealers, the better it's going to be for you, because in the same way that Alex and I bounce ideas off each other, you may have an idea to be able to do something one way that would be new to me, and I get to learn something new, or vice versa, where, hey, did you ever think about doing it this way instead? And I might be able to knock off a few $1,000s off of your quote and make you a little bit more competitive and higher and a better likelihood of winning the job. Yeah. So, we're here for you.
Yeah. Again, just to wrap everything up, we would strongly recommend you go to our SHURE website.
Yep.
And from there, you could see our splash page for the 920.
Yep.
You could see the splash page for our entire MXA line. You could also go and you could log in and create your own profile for SAI, and you can start taking those courses.
And we did mention at the very beginning that we were going to talk a little bit about Dante. We didn't really have a chance to go, too far into it. For those who are less familiar, Dante at its most basic is an audio over IP protocol. That means that the devices that are using Dante are going to be connected to a network switch. All of the SHURE products that are Dante enabled will also be powered via PoE. That includes the speaker. So you're not running a separate amplifier. It is being powered and receiving data both over the same exact network cable over a PoE plus switch. Now that's an important qualifier. Make sure that it's a PoE plus switch, not a PoE regular. There's the difference there is 15 watts versus 30 watts. You want to make sure that you're giving it the power that it needs. And I think the N uses 20 something.
Yeah.
So yeah. It won't work on a PoE. It's got to be a PoE plus. The point there again is that all of our Luxel switches that we're carrying audio video export, they're all PoE plus. I know there's a little bit of shortage on some of them, but we've got solutions for you guys. And with the P300 or the ANI USB or the IntelliMix Room, you now have an on-ramp and an off-ramp for all of those Dante channels. If you're a little bit more Dante advanced, then you know that in most cases, or in all cases, you would have to run the Dante controller. If you're using a P300 or the IntelliMix Room, that's taking care of all of the routing for you. The software is doing the routing for you. So it takes place in lieu of the Dante controller.
Yeah. The idea was to not have you guys jump on 4 different software,
right?
Just to
get a system working.
working.
Now, the other neat thing is that we didn't talk about it at all. Is the mute button. So you guys have the NXM mute.
Yes.
And all it is, it's a Dante-enabled device. It's powered via PoE. It's a button that can do any number of things, but it says mute on it. So most people use it for mute. And even though it's a Dante device, it is not an audio source. So it will not show up on Dante controller. So the only way to be able to program that is via the SHURE software.
Exactly. Yep, that's right.
So keep that in mind.
We could also have it mute at different instances if you're using it for the default. So if you connect just to the 920, you could have it mute just to 920. If you connect it to the P300 or the IMX Room software, you'll be muting your entire software.
Okay.
The reason you would want one or the other is just in case your presenter has a lavalier microphone on, you can hit a button and only turn off the 920, giving you the clearest and most direct microphone
from the lavalier.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good feature. So again, if there are any questions, feel free. I'm going to stop that recording.